Deborah, thanks for coming in today to talk with me a little bit about your past history coming to UCI, your philosophy around doctoral training, and your research. So let's start with your decision to come to UCI, because 10 years before I came here, you made a tougher decision to come here, because I had the benefits of everything you had built over those 10 years. Tell me a little bit about your motivations and decision-making process to come here.
Okay. So I was in Southern California on sabbatical, having a wonderful time at the University of Wisconsin, but I was here doing the sabbatical and was on my way to Rand to do some work on childcare with a UCI faculty member, Allison Clark Stewart. She got a call on her phone to set up a search committee meeting for the chair of the Department of Education. And so the person that was on the phone was Mark Warschauer, and he was seeing if they could have the time to meet. She got off the phone and she said, you know, they're looking for a chair of education. You'd be really good at that job. Why don't you think about applying? And I said, well, tell me about it. She started to say, telling me about the position, and it was going to be one very small unit, very strong in teacher education, really respected in the community, but very few Senate faculty, very few research faculty. And the idea of having a chance to working with the people who were here on really building a school of education hit me at the right moment in my life, and I decided I wanted to do it.
And exactly how small was the unit then?
There were 5 faculty, and that there were 3 assistant professors, and one person who was just getting promoted to associate professor, and
Mark Warschauer.
Yes, and then one person who retired the next year who was a full professor. So it was, we had some really good people here, but there were not very many of them. And the university really made a decision. The decision for them, are they going to close down because it's too small to be viable, or were they going to invest? And the provost at that time was Mike Gottfredson, who is still a very respected criminologist, whose work was focusing on the importance of early development and education in relation to crime prevention. And he was ready to invest.
Right. Well, you spoke his language, right? Because of all your early childhood.
Right. So the two of us, when I went in and met with him, it was he could see a vision for building a school of education that was unlike any other school of education, that had more of a focus than many schools of education had on early childhood, that was looking at learning in school and out of school, that was really thinking about ways of looking at technology and education, areas that a lot of schools of education are starting to look at now, but back in 2005, there were not many people doing that. And when I came in January of 2006, we were ready to start recruiting. The campus really made some commitments for strong senior hires as well as junior hires, and it's been a ride.
And right from the start, right, you brought in Greg Duncan and George Farkas, right, and really built this incredible, like you said, senior cohort of senior scholars.
Right.
Jackie Eccles came
Jackie
later.
kept, well, so actually I had a wish list as soon as I got here, and Jackie was on the original wish list. And so we tried to get her initially, and we couldn't get her, but several years later it was the right time to come. And so one of the things we did, that I and the faculty did, was really focus on bringing in some really outstanding senior people, sort of the internationally most renowned people that you could find, and they were committed to building a top-rate doctoral program, and they were really committed to building a school. And that was the vision that all of us had.
Yeah, and what seemed really unusual to me coming in was the strength in these disciplinary perspectives, particularly ones that aren't always represented in education schools, like economics, sociology. Psychology is always, or often a strong disciplinary presence in ed schools.
I was inspired in part by the Spencer Foundation had funded some doctoral training initiatives while I was at the University of Wisconsin, where they were really going into top universities and trying to find ways to bring people in the disciplines to collaborate with people in schools of education. And when I came here, I thought, well, why would we do that when we could also recruit people in the disciplines to come to the school and then bring in the rest of the university with wanting to work with these outstanding economists and sociologists. And so it was very appealing to the top people.
And at the time, I think that was when Ellen Lageman was at the Spencer Foundation,
Right,
pushing
right.
the disciplinary-based approach.
Right, right.
Who coincidentally recruited me to New York University around that same model.
That same model. Well,
Before and immediately left for this, to run the Spencer Foundation.
Right. Oh, I didn't know that.
No.
Yeah, yeah.
So you were incredibly successful in building this capacity here at the School of Education at UCI, and what would you attribute your success in continuing to convince the university to make these additional investments year after year in the school?
A lot of times, it's not that easy to recruit senior faculty, especially sort of the most respected senior faculty in the world. How do you do that? And I think initially the campus was surprised that there were these really strong faculty at all ranks, but especially the senior faculty that were interested and willing to come. And that success kind of built on itself because I think actually some of the initiatives that the university then started to do built on the idea. So the cluster hire, the high impact hires were really looking at some of the leveraging that we were doing in education, and then they built on that idea. But and there's nothing that succeeds quite as well as success for getting more positions. So
Right.
if you weren't able to fill some, then you're less likely to get them the next time. But then people were coming in and really successful with grant dollars, really successful in attracting top graduate students, and really starting to establish a profile for the school. Didn't hurt that the Chronicle of Higher Education did a story on Greg and George coming. That was nice. It's on the president's desk, when you go on the chancellor's desk when you go in to see him and see that on there. So that helped.
You attracted top faculty, you built this stellar PhD program, and then you also started this major, undergraduate major, which is now, I think, the third or fourth biggest at the university.
Right.
And it's a unique major. Say a little bit about the vision around that.
When I came, we had a really successful minor in education studies, and people across the country or across the campus were taking the minor. But when we would then be meeting people, for example, graduates, people were identifying with other parts of the campus. So we didn't really have an alumni base of undergraduates because we didn't have an undergraduate major. We had this really good teacher education program for the credential program and the master's program, but we had these people who liked the minor, and I thought, why can't we have a major? We have all of this interest why won't we have that role in the university where undergraduate education is so important? We want to be part of that conversation. So I started talking with the faculty. Mark Warschauer was the associate dean then. I said, Mark, we should really do this. The faculty were excited about it. And then the question is, well, a lot of people thought, well, the University of California doesn't allow, or the state of California doesn't allow undergraduate majors in education. And because they don't want people getting their teaching credentials, that you can't, by law, get your teaching credential as an undergraduate. So it was, no, let's build on the ideas that are in the PhD program. It'll be an undergraduate major in education sciences that's really bringing together the sort of threads that you also see in the PhD program, with thinking about early childhood, out of school time, higher ed, education and technology. So those kind of themes got picked up in the undergraduate major, and it was the first undergraduate major in education sciences in the United States, and I think the world.
And I think of it also as being aligned not just with the PhD program, but also with the national movement in DC around standing up and articulating a vision for educational sciences.
Right.
So I don't know whether that was an explicit or conscious reference point, or whether...
Well, it's hard to know sometimes which way some of these directions are going, because I was very involved in the American Education Research Association. So I would go to meetings and I would talk to Felice Levine, who was the executive director. I'd say, we're starting this undergraduate major on education sciences. She said, what's that? So I think there's some talk in Washington now that I think it actually comes out of UC Irvine.
That's great. And I also, I know the next generation science standards also, there's accounts that had bubbled up out of conversations that started here at UCI as well.
Yeah, right.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Deborah, for sharing these insights with me today.
My pleasure.
Great.
Thank you for inviting me to your office.